Thank you, Liv. Good afternoon, friends, excellencies, distinguished panelists I'm going to be with, and all of you here. I'd like to thank very much Norad for inviting me to this important conference and to congratulate you, particularly on that title, Rights and Resistance. Almost like 40 years ago, I won't say when, I was a young student, just graduated, starting on a PhD program in science. I abandoned it and went to join a resistance. We were resisting autocratic rule, violation of our human rights in my country, Uganda. I've never looked back. I'm a woman of the resistance. I like this title, Rights and Resistance. Yeah. Because rights are claimed, and claiming rights is a struggle. Our progress on women's rights, on human rights, is in peril. And it's not just the commitments that were made a few years ago in the SDGs for 2030. It's everything we have won since 1945 that is under threat. But we're not here to mourn. We are here to re-energize. We are here to organize. We can win a world where everyone's rights are respected. But first, there are three things we need to do. First, we need to deepen our understanding of this pushback, what we keep calling the pushback on human rights and democracy. We need to understand it deeply. Secondly, we need to bring our efforts together. We need to connect the dots. We need to link the struggles. We need to think long-term and be bold because we are in a resistance. Third, we need to back, and by backing I mean resourcing, the people most impacted by this attack on rights. I want to touch on those three things. Because for me, first and foremost amongst the people who are under attack is women and girls from the poorest, most marginalized communities. So let me talk about this backlash. We are in a world where conflicts, protracted conflicts, are increasing, taking place in many countries, perhaps over 40. And in most of these countries, women's bodies are on the front line. They are a battlefield, among other things. The 5 richest men in the world, billionaires, have doubled their fortunes since 2020. In 4 years, they've doubled their billions. They're 5. And at the same time, 5 billion people have become poorer. You see, those few at the top running off with the wealth and billions sinking. Globally, men own $105 trillion more wealth than women. That's a distribution. The majority of the world's poorest countries are being forced by the debt crisis, what's happening to my potato, to cut public spending. They are cutting it, and over the next years, we are seeing education, health being squeezed out of budgets and particularly impacting women and girls from poor communities. The world is way off track to meet the gender targets that were set in the Sustainable Development Goals. UN Women tells us that the reason is, I quote, deeply rooted biases against women, manifested in unequal access to sexual and reproductive health, unequal political representation, economic disparities, and a lack of legal protection. Across the world, 122 million girls are out of school. These girls, many of them, are not able to access or even to know what they need to protect themselves because they're not allowed to have the information, life-saving, comprehensive sexuality education. In Iran, a new law will punish business owners who serve women not wearing a hijab. And activists who challenge this obligation to wear a hijab can be imprisoned for up to 10 years. In my country, Uganda, LGBT people can face the death penalty, death itself. And in several other countries, similar laws are being proposed. Parliamentarians are in overdrive to punish people for who they are and who they love. In Russia, the Supreme Court has banned the international, what they call the international LGBT social movement. They've banned a social movement. 87% of the world's people live in countries which Civicus is here, rank as closed or repressed countries. So the majority of us live in such countries. 63 of those countries have no provisions in place to allow registration, operation, funding of NGOs or community service organizations, and this pushback is on. So, my friends, this pushback is real, have no doubt. It is global, in case you thought it's in a few countries. It is global. It is permanent, or let me say it's long-term, in case you thought it is going to be gone in another few years, months. No, it's long-term, because it is rooted in changing global international politics. So it's here for a long time. It is well-funded. It is well-organized. It's been there for some time. In the name of parental rights, girls are denied even a test for HIV. In many countries where I work, a girl may not go for a test because there are parental laws that won't allow her to go to get that life-saving information. In the name of family values, people are criminalized simply for being who they are, how they were born. Harmful laws and policies are being advanced. Vigilante violence is rising. Hate is being normalized. And at this time, when international solidarity is most needed, we are seeing some wealthy countries retreating from international commitments to development and human rights. There's a warning light flashing red. But let me come to my second point. We can beat this. We can, because we've done so before. But to do so, we have to get to the roots of this challenge. I put it to you, we have to challenge extreme inequality, which is rooted in patriarchy and in an extreme form of capitalism that is exploitative, extractive, violent, and oppressive to people and planet alike, in particular to women and girls. We have to challenge a global economic order that privileges wealthy men and exploits the unpaid labor of women. This is just one aspect of a rigged economic model. We must challenge militarism, strongman politics that are driving this exploitative economic model. We must challenge many things. We must challenge the lie that women's rights undermine culture and tradition. We must put human rights at the center of all our development efforts. We in the AIDS movement have been centering human rights and women's rights in the health space. We have refused to accept that you can deliver health services and succeed without putting women's rights, girls' rights, human rights at the center. We've demonstrated how patriarchal, racist, homophobic laws, policies, practices, and beliefs undermine health and hurt everyone. We challenge those. We have shown how acceptance, inclusion, respect for all people is what powers progress. To protect the well-being of everyone, the health of everyone, we have to protect the rights of everyone. And in all of this, global solidarity is key. We can't do it alone. No country will achieve it alone. When the world came together, we saw progress on rights. We have seen success on women's rights and girls' rights, but the world came together. The 20th century was a century of winning rights for girls and women. We won the right to vote. We opened the doors of parliaments, of corporate boardrooms. We closed the gap between girls and boys in basic education. All this was achieved through global solidarity. No one country made it alone. In our world of HIV, 20 years ago, we had more than 2.5 million people being infected with HIV every year. In 20 years, we've brought that down by a half. At the last count, it's 1.2 million people last year. We have put almost 30 million people on treatment. They are living good lives. At that time, they were all dying. HIV was a death sentence. Today, it's not. But we still have 9.2 million people we have to bring on treatment. And guess what? Most of those are not on treatment. Why? Because their rights are denied. They are gay men. Gay men are 11 times more vulnerable to HIV than other people. They are fleeing the law in many countries. They are hiding from stigma and discrimination. So rights are key. With rights, everyone, that 9.2, can come on treatment. So, my friends, I come then to my third point, which is that we have to put power in the hands of those whose rights are denied. Progress will come when we put power in the hands and money is power, in the hands of those whose lives are impacted by the denial of rights. And as I say, women and girls from the poorest, most marginalized communities are the most important leaders in this struggle. It's a struggle for equality, it's a struggle for rights. We must support and resource them. We must allow them to lead. But today, my friends, do you know that less than 1% of total aid is focused on gender equality and going to, 1% of all the money going to gender equality, only 1% is reaching the hands of women's and girls' organizations. So we are putting the money into the hands of those who will work on behalf of the people whose lives are most affected. It's a mistake. We must make that shift. We must put the money in the hands of feminist organizations, girls' rights organizations, to fight for their lives, to push and win the human rights of everybody. So we need a sustained investment in independent, autonomous feminist movements in the Global South especially. Thank you. We must bring the movements together. Sexual and reproductive rights are a frontline. So is political voice and the right to be part of political solutions, conflicts, and all of that. We must bring the movements together. LGBTQ people are a sexual minority. Their rights must be fought for by everybody fighting for human rights. They must not stand alone. Racism, those who fight against racism, must be part of the broader movement for human rights. Connecting the dots, linking the struggles is key here. Climate justice. The fact that in many of the countries where we fight HIV/AIDS, that in those very countries, that is where the impact of climate change is being felt the most, tells us that the climate movement must be part of the human rights movement, the women's movement, the girls' rights movement. So connecting these struggles is key. I now want to conclude. I've mentioned the leaders, that it is the girls' groups. By the way, if you look at what young people are doing to challenge inequality, to challenge climate breakdown, to challenge violence and militarism, they are the teachers today. They are organizing differently, they are speaking differently. But why are we not empowering them? Because this word risk. We see them as risky. We must change how we see, we must change how we do development. We must take the risks. We must risk on them. By not taking risks, we have funded organizations that are mainstream, that are big, that are credible. And these, we have found, especially in our world of HIV, that they were the ones being part of this hate campaign against sexual minorities. They are the ones against the right to abortion. They are the ones who want to look good before autocratic governments. We must now change how we see the leaders of these struggles. We must find them where they are. We must resource them. We must allow them to take, they risk with their bodies, they risk with their lives. Let's risk with our money. Let's risk with our resources of knowledge. Our risk is smaller than the risk on the front lines. So I thank you all. Those are the three things we need to do, in my view. The first one, to understand, deeply understand this pushback on rights and democracy. See that it's long-term, it's well-funded, it's rooted in changing politics. Secondly, to link struggles, to really make sure that we are addressing this problem by tackling the roots of inequality, patriarchy, and extreme shareholder capitalism. And thirdly, to put the leaders in the front and resource them. Thank you so much.